Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself, Mike and Sloth today. We're going to be looking ahead at pre-season now coming up and some of the youth players we're looking forward to. We're going to get our top 5 picks, some of them obviously more notable than others. And we're just going to kind of break down a little bit about the type of player they are and why we're looking forward to them playing under Lopetegui in pre-season. So first one's kind of an obvious one. He's already made his Premier League debut. He's already scored in the Premier League. Of course, that is George Urphy. Still only, 19 years old. So much talent, so much potential. This is the one that excites me most. How are you guys feeling about George Urphy? And especially with the videos that have already come out with him and Lopetegui kind of interacting around the training ground.
Yeah, I think it's great. He's been probably one of the standouts of that under-18 team that won the FA Cup. And to be honest, there were a fair few players that kind of stood up and kind of took your attention, him being one of them. What I think is great is he can play centre midfield as a bit of an 8. He can play as that advanced 10. I think what we also saw was him coming on, kind of drifting out wide to the left to coming onto his right. I think him being only 19, I think 19, 20, it really does give us a player that can be really flexible, can be moulded into any position really arguably we need. I think he'll probably tend to be more on the left-hand side if we're going to play him because it can come in onto his right. But I think it's really exciting. He's shown in flashes, great movement, good intelligence as well. His goal highlighted how, the level of intelligence that he has on the pitch, which you could argue does exceed his tender years. Yeah, I think it's a really exciting one for us to have. And this summer is a big one for him because if he continues in the vein of those short cameos that he's had, he will definitely be in and around the squad for Lopetegui going forward.
Sloth, where do you think his best position is? I know it's early days for him and there's still loads of development to happen. As you mentioned there, he can play as an 8, he can play as a 10, he can play out on the left-hand side. Where would you say his best position currently is with his talent?
Oof. I think maybe this one's going to be a bit biased for me because watching his goal against Luton, I think that the comparison that came into my brain was Manuel Lanzini. So I think maybe in that 10 position will be the one that suits him best going forward, because him and Lanzini both showed that movement of a poacher, which you don't kind of you don't assume to be natural for that type of player. You tend to perceive those goals as quite flashy, or there'll be tidy finishes around the area, whereas he made that extra bit of room for himself, and it almost reminded me of like a proper poacher's goal, like Javier Hernandez when he was at Man United. And I think getting him central, finding those pockets of spaces and looking for passes, which I think he already showed some great link-up play in his cameo appearances. It's something that I think we could see him filling in, whether it's in cup games, rotating in off the bench and grabbing a bit of a bigger role this season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think either, like you say, in that number 10 role is his best position because, you can tell by the way he plays football, on the half turn straight away, very good technically. And as you mentioned, already has the instinct to get in the box to score goals, which I know it's very early days, but to have that natural instinct and ability to do that, you want him kind of involved as much as possible. So he's not I don't think he's going to be like an out and out winger, like baseline winger. I think if he does play out on the left, it'll be more of an inverted winger, kind of getting the ball between the lines, just because of how good he is technically. But yeah, George Urphy, man, he's an exciting.
It'd be like Kudus. When we put Kudus on the left-hand side, in terms of when Kudus really kind of drifts in, that would be how he would play. But yeah, I'm really excited about him. I would, like to Sloss one, playing him in that kind of 10 role is probably the best place to have him because he can sniff out a goal. He already seems to have that kind of instinct. He likes to get in and around the area. I guess the last time we've had a midfielder really who is like that, it's Frank Lampard. I could really see him having that kind of benefit of coming from deep and scoring from, runs arriving late at the edge of the area, or like you saw the goal against, I can't remember who he scored against now. I think it's Luton, wasn't it?
Luton, yeah.
So that kind of drifting into the area, or as I like to say, ghosting, and then just kind of getting on the blind side of defender and then running around the front. It's something that me and Sloth talked about for ages that we don't see enough of at West Ham is players making front post runs. He just did that, and it seemed instinctive of him. And I think that's something we really need to harness players that have that instinctive kind of innate ability to understand where the space is and taking chances. And players that take chances are the people that you need to invest in, because they are the types of players that can change a game with a pass, or they can change a game with just sniffing out a half chance and then converting.
Yeah,
I've
no,
got
I
my
completely
fingers
agree.
crossed for him this season as well, because I think that video of when Lopetegui came in and obviously was so sort of expressive and positive towards Earthy, I think that is a big sign of hopefully how highly he's regarded by Lopetegui.
100%, 100%. I think he's one of the most exciting academy products I've seen in a bit. To be honest, that type of player, just my favorite type of player, is the way George Earthy plays. So, another midfielder. As we move on to the youth player number 2. This video is sponsored by Emotiv. Emotiv provide cutting-edge digital services, solutions, and training to companies and businesses of all sizes. Emotiv have worked with some fantastic brands in the past, as you can see behind me, the likes of Apple, Google, Tesco, and of course, Babylon Irons. Emotiv offer 4 key services, the first being digital solutions, the second being professional training and coaching, the third being fractional experts, and the fourth being AI readiness. We're going to be working with Emotiv on our channel to improve how we showcase the data to you guys in our breakdown videos and data analysis videos. If you want to find out more information about how Emotiv can work with you, make sure to scan the QR code now, which will take you to emotivtouch.com, where you can find out more details about the company, and the link will be in the description. A massive thank you to Emotiv once again for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. More defense-minded, but again, he was absolutely fantastic on loan last season. Obviously, that is Freddie Potts. Really, really good season out in League One last year. And he's now came back early. He obviously finished the season, was doing some kind of training before we even finished our campaign in the Premier League last year. So he's another one that's going to be really determined to kind of break into that starting 11, first team, sorry. Who knows, maybe the starting 11, to kind of play in that number 6 position. So Potts, how do we assess him so far? Because he's someone a little bit older than George Earthy, but again, he got a lot more minutes in League One last season, kind of established himself as a regular, playing first team football, and now he's coming with a point to prove under Lopetegui. Do we see him maybe squeezing into this squad for next season?
Well, I'd like to see it. I think he is, from what I was understanding of his time on loan, he was by far head and shoulders the player to watch. And, you know, it says a lot that he went there and he won their player of the season. So by all accounts, he's a very, very tidy player. His close control is great. But I think it's the one sort of niggling doubt I have is just the physicality and whether he's ready to do that. But if ever there was a loan that can kind of put that at ease, it's League One. So I think that's kind of put that doubt out the back of my mind. And I'd like to see him given the chance off the bench. I don't think I think he'll have to grab the opportunities that he gets, whether that's in a cup game or whether it's off the bench late on. I think we may well look to bring in another central mid, whether it's whether that's down to Downs' future, and it's dependent on that sort of transfer. I think maybe that central midfield area will be the tightest one to try and get into. But if ever there's a player, just going off the reviews that he had while he was on loan, it's him, because it sounds like he's very tidy. He doesn't like to take risks, but it's a case of his passing range is solid enough, and he links up with other players well enough to be able to put in a shift and go that extra mile.
Yeah, I mean, he's the anchor, isn't he? He's someone that's going to. I remember watching him. I think it was last season in pre-season, or maybe the year before, down at Boreham Wood, a National League team, and he was really, really good. Really impressed me. I remember tweeting out on Babylon saying, you know, this guy has got a very big talent coming up, future ahead of him as well. And you know, again, I don't want to say Declan Rice, but it gave me vibes of Declan Rice, the way he was playing as the 6, you know, very athletic, very composed on the ball, did the neat and tidy very well. Not the most, you know, he's not going to give you the wow factor, but solid performances. And I think that's why he was a standout for Wycombe last season, and actually got there, you know, it was voted player of the season by their own players. So yeah, I think he's someone that could potentially come in. I think it depends, again, whether Downs stays or goes, whether we replace Downs, or whether we bring in maybe another number 8, and then Souček maybe drops into the number 6 as well when needed to cover. But I think Potts could be one that surprises a few in pre-season this summer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've said it before that he reminds me of a hybrid of Declan Rice and kind of Michael Carrick. It's that completely unflappable nature on the ball where he just seems to, glide with the ball when he has it. Seems to just make it simple passes, but sometimes he's making line breakers, but there seems a lack of effort in how he makes them. That's not to say that he's not trying. What I mean is it's an effortless type of passing. He's like a metronome, essentially. He will keep you ticking over. You can consistently feed the ball to him, and he will find and pass the ball out. And obviously, Sloth's point, he physically, if you can make it in League One physically, then you are in a very good place to then make those moves up. And if you've looked at recent pictures, I've said it to you guys, he looks huge at the moment. He looks like he's really put in the work physically. And also when he was in Dubai, he was also doing additional training. So he's on holiday, but still doing his pre-season training. So he's doing everything he can to make himself ready. And I do think that whilst we will, I'm convinced we will see at least one more midfielder. So it is going to be packed in there. However, he offers something that Ward-Prowse can't and what Souček can't in that role at the 6. He's probably the closest we have in terms of a natural, not necessarily successor, but backup to Alvarez. Obviously, we may go get a pure kind of CDM, which is fine. But I think Potts has enough about his game where he can be a 6 or he can play as an 8 because of just how comfortable he is in possession. He's not going to, wow people in terms of he's going to pick up the ball and run 60 yards, beat 3 or 4 players, or he's going to make these, massive Hollywood passes. But what he's going to do, he's going to be that type of player, much like I would say, like how Jordan Henderson had been for years for Liverpool. That player that was quite steady but had an incredible engine, would break things up, would pass it on, and then will kind of appear at the right times, to maybe getting a goal or two. That's how I see his role kind of within West Ham, to kind of maybe progresses into that kind of more box-to-box 8. But for me, I see quite a few comparisons to Potts, with Potts as to how he defends like Declan Rice, and even some of his tackles seem very much similar. And we're in possession, the way he passes and moves the ball around really does remind me of Michael Carrick.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as well, you're looking at Alvarez right now, who's out injured. So again, more space to impress in pre-season while Alvarez is out as well. As you mentioned, he's probably the most natural 6 replacement instead of Alvarez in that squad. So it'll be interesting to see how Lopetegui utilizes him in pre-season, whether that's with the A team or the B team. You always have your kind of strong and weak teams in pre-season. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Lopetegui utilizes him with in pre-season. But moving on to number 3, another player that was out on Wickham, on loan at Wickham last season was Kadewere. Obviously, he kind of went onto the map with West Ham fans after that goal in the FA Cup Youth Final against Arsenal. That was a crazy
not just goal, a Puskás nominated goal. So it voted as one of the best goals of the season. It wasn't just a goal; it was one of the best goals of that season in world football. It was voted as.
Exactly. I mean, there you go. I didn't do it enough justice, but there we go. Yeah, he was fantastic in that game, and didn't really kind of push on as expected in that Wickham loan. I think his minutes were quite limited. A lot of appearances he made. I think he only made 10 appearances, but a lot of those were off the bench with kind of like 20 minutes to go. Didn't really get a fair crack at the whip in comparison to Potts, who was a mainstay. But again, you kind of have to fight your way into those types of teams and kind of make that position your own. But yeah, let's talk about kind of Kadewere. He's still only young. What would you say his best kind of traits are that you've seen so far? And does he have any room to kind of impress and get into the squad for next season under Lopetegui? Because it's now a position where we're starting to get a little bit compact now.
I think, yeah, he does. If we look at it logically, Bowen and Kudus are both not going to play right wing. Kudus is either going to go to the left or he's going to go into attacking midfield. So there is a opportunity for someone to come in to then take that right wing berth.
Would Gilherme maybe not be doing that? Maybe.
I think Gilherme will probably see more likely on the left or playing as attacking midfield. Again, what Steiten has talked about is with Gilherme, and when you look at Kudus and even Bowen, they are players that are flexible. They can play in multiple positions. Kadewere also can play on either flank. He did the same with the under 18s as captain. He can play behind the striker, and he can also play up top as a striker as well. So again, it's another player that is very flexible, can operate in multiple positions, which is someone that is going to intrigue any manager, because it's a player that you can maybe put into different positions. Means in game you don't necessarily need to use subs if they play, because you can amend their position on the pitch to get a different kind of impact. I think what we've seen with Kadewere is that he's not exactly the tallest, but he's powerful. He's a good, strong runner. He's not necessarily he's not blistering pace, but he's got good pace, very skillful, good with the ball. And also, one of the things we talked about with Murphy, he has an eye for a goal. He gets himself into good positions. He takes good shots as well. And it's intelligent shots. It's not just shooting for shooting's sake. He takes good shots. And it's something, again, we've mentioned with Murphy, player take a risk. He will take a risk in terms of, I'm going to shoot to try and get, make something happen. And also, when you look at what he did with that Arsenal goal, to have the bravery and the kind of vision to go, the keeper's off the line, I'm gonna chip him. Bear in mind, he had so much space ahead, and most players would think, I'm not going to chance it, but he took that chance. I think that also shows a level of what type of player it is. And if you've seen, I think the West Ham did a video with Kadewere talking about his many rejections and so on prior to coming to West Ham. I think that will also be fuel for him. And if we look back to last pre-season, he had a couple of good games when he came on. He even scored, I think, on his first pre-season game. He came on and actually scored. It might have been against Boreham Wood.
I think it was Boreham Wood, yeah. I think it was Boreham Wood.
So he also scored in that game and looked a bit of a live wire. However, as we know with David Moyes, doesn't matter how well you play in pre-season. If you're a youth player, you are going to get zero opportunity. So I'm kind of, in that respect, I'm glad Moyes is gone, because we might actually see these youth lads actually get a reward for what they've done. And I know some people say, well, you have to earn it. What more can you do as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, other than playing to the absolute optimum in your under-18 league, which they were, win that league in the Southern Piece, narrowly miss out to Man City, go and win the FA Cup, and also be the captain of that in pre-season, then go and score, look good in those games, but they're never given an opportunity the following season. Obviously, went out on loan to Wickham, and towards the end of the year, was getting more chances, was actually looking like he could have made a difference. However, they were a team that was settled and they were doing pretty well. So it's hard for a youngster to come in and break that. But I do feel that it's not make or break for him this summer, because he's still young, but it's definitely an opportunity for him to kind of stake a claim and make a point of, I'm here and I'm ready to kind of grasp this opportunity. I think it's that for those youngsters. They need to have that mentality of, I'm either here to prove that I'm worth the opportunity, or I'm here to prove in pre-season that I'm worth going to maybe a league, a championship team, something on loan, or even, as we now have that partnership in Austria, utilising that and sending maybe one of the kids to the top Austrian league and having them play out there, where it's completely different for them. But also it's going to be a top quality league where they're going to play against good teams, good technical teams, and really to test how good they are and see what the readiness is for the Premier League in 6 months to even a year's time.
How do you see it, Sloth? Do you think Kadewere can get into the squad for next season?
I don't see why not. Like as we've said, I think we had very big hopes for him when we saw that goal against Arsenal, and I think the Wickham loan, by all accounts, was quite a mixed bag. But it sounded like he just came into a side that was quite settled, and unfortunately, it wasn't like he was going to steal that position. And for a young lad to come into that sort of side, it's tough to do. That's a huge ask for a youngster. And I just hope that this year, if we are going to give him opportunities, we give him enough opportunities, and hopefully off the bench, because I think if you're throwing him on the pitch with 20-25 minutes to go, he's not got blistering pace, but he's very quick, and someone who can combine a bit of pace on the ball, a bit of trickery, because he's very skillful. I think that, with an eye for goal, someone who's willing to take that chance, that can get you a winner. That's something that can get you something from a game, get you through to the next round of a cup. And that's the sort of player that West Ham fans want to see. And look, if he can't do that, I think January is going to be a key time for him. We can find him another loan, but I was really impressed with him, and I was disappointed he didn't get more minutes at Wycombe. But again, you know, there are reasons for that I think make that totally justifiable from Wycombe's end.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, it'll be interesting to see how I think he has to perform in pre-season just because of the different options. And I think we'll probably sign another winger out on the left-hand side as well. So again, it depends if Paqueta's going to stay and where we play Kudus. You know, Bowen's going to be on that right-hand side. So I think it's more likely Kudus would go out on loan than the other two names you've already mentioned so far. But again, if he performs in pre-season, I think Lopetegui has already shown he's going to be the type of manager to try and integrate youth where he can. So yeah, I guess it's down to him to put in the performances and see where it takes him. But another player that scored in that FA Youth Cup final, slightly different player, not an attacker, a centre back, and that was obviously Casey. Again, another really, really exciting talent. Not the exciting in terms of George Urphy, but he looks like a really, really solid centre back. So, Casey, how are you feeling about him in this pre-season?
It's probably the hardest position to break into as a youngster.
I don't know. After West Ham last season, centre back.
Yeah, I know. But it's so
wheelchair, and you probably got a good chance of getting.
To be honest, I think at times a traffic cone would have been more a bigger deterrent to an attacker than what we had on offer. But you know, as a young kid, I say young kid, as a young man as he is, he's just a few months older than George Urphy. It's a big ask to come into the Premier League and to kind of come out. Obviously, he made his debut in the Conference League and made his Premier League debut, I believe, in that Luton game as well. Towards the end, he's certainly a player I could see us maybe keeping around as a fifth choice option. I do think we're going to go for another centre back. We're going to sell Lagarde. Zuma is up in the air as to whether he will or he won't go, a bit like what we're seeing with Danny Ings. They may try and refuse to stay for the remainder of their year and go on a free. However, I think Casey's possibly closer to a loan than he is getting a chance in the first team. However, there's no time like a pre-season to show your worth. And with the likes of Aged seemingly not back in pre-season training yet, for no real apparent reason.
We know why.
Zuma, obviously, we have seen back, so he'll be there. You know, we don't have, other than Mavropanos and also with Kilman, who just signed, he's going to get an opportunity in pre-season because he's going to get kind of used to see what he can do. He might even have to play it maybe right back, for instance, because we don't have Soufal, although, again, another name we saw last season, Levi Lang, might get a chance right back again in pre-season because it's going to be no Soufal probably for another week or two because of the Euros.
Yeah. What about, again, it's a position we need to strengthen in centre-back. Obviously, we've brought in Kilman, as you mentioned. Zuma's around. Aged's likely to go. We've got Mavropanos. So we're still quite light there. We've already been linked with the likes of, bringing in someone like Greaves from Hull, but he's now looking likely to go to Ipswich as time of recording. Is this maybe a chance and a case for Casey to stake a claim in this squad and, make this pre-season his own and show that Lopetegui doesn't need to go out into the market and sign another centre-back?
I think that's a huge ask. I think that's a huge ask for any youngster. But I do think that centre-back is the hardest position in this league to break through in because
over goalie.
Yeah, but I think goalkeeper is something that you're going to see pretty early on, whether they have the knowledge or not, whether they have the skill set to make it at this level. And I think when you hear about goalkeepers who are going to be big, you hear about them from a very early age. Oh, wow, this guy's impressing. And even Trott, I think he was someone who I think quite a few guys want to see a little bit more of. But even the things coming out, they weren't massively. I don't think they were quite at the level of people saying he needs a Premier League game.
It's more like he's a solid option. And that was kind of it. There was no real. Exactly. It's not like with Hedgie where he's actually this kid could be good.
Yeah,
and I think in Casey's case that it's it's just you're better off safeguarding and then giving him a chance off the bench. I don't think giving a young player in such a tough position an immediately sort of baptism of fire is the way to go, because
I think it's only kind of feasible to do it if you're playing like a back three where it's easier to integrate, like we saw with Declan Rice.
I think you can bring someone in, but also I think physically he probably needs to fill up. He's quite it's a horrible definition, but he still looks very lanky and he still looks very young. He's not like with Branthwaite, who physically was a lot bigger when he went out on loan again. I think to Division 1. Was it Barnsley?
Yeah.
I think he went on loan to.
Yeah. And then he went to PSV.
He's abroad as well, weren't he, in Eredivisie?
Yeah, he was in PSV.
Yeah,
so I think
exactly.
again you've kind of got to look at. It's a really hard position to come through, especially if you're not physically ready. I would say that he probably needs a full season training with the first team and building up physically, or going out on loan to something like a League One and taking lumps, because being a defender, you've got to be able to take lumps. And I do think there's a player in Casey. He looks composed. He's very tall. Yeah. Well, I think it's like 6'3", something like that. But it's a big ask to us and coming in. Like I say, as a fifth choice, I can see it. I don't see him making an impact directly in the first team, other than say in the cup games. If we, hopefully we go further in cup games than normal. But in cup games is where I see, if he gets a place, that's where it will be.
Yeah, I think he'll be loaned.
Graham used to say, I think he needs to get on the weights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he'll be loaned out, to be honest. It'll be tough for him to break into that back line, especially because, Lopetegui is going to be under heavy scrutiny around our defence next season, just because of the season we've just come back off. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that one. The last name I'm going to mention, obviously, is Lewis Orford. Now, this time last summer, I think it was around August, I remember BBC put out a YouTube video saying, is this West Ham's next Declan Rice playing in midfield? Massive weight of shoulders straight onto him, massive expectations. What's our response to that a year later?
Needs a chance to be given. If he's going to be the next Declan Rice, he needs to be given a chance. And we've got to remember, I think some people forget that Declan wasn't as refined a player as it's kind of been told when he first came in. He was pretty rough, and also played centre back, played in the back three before he went into midfield, and he had an absolute shocker against Liverpool where he's all at sea. And if he wasn't for Pellegrini telling him to take out of your mind that you need a loan, you need to work harder to get in this team, and that seemed to be the impetus. I think the problem is as often with West Ham, youth players are punished because of what happened with Reece Oxford. He has his contract, he's ended last year. So we need to resolve that ASAP, because the kid has immense potential. He could be our next Declan Rice.
Still only 18 as well.
Exactly. Yeah. He's still incredibly young. We're talking about, does he deserve a chance in the first team? I think what's been said is that he's going to get a chance along with Orford, as well as a couple of others. And by all accounts, the young lads have shown themselves to be really professional in the pre-season, which is great to see. But we need to get a contract sorted for him, and a fair one. We can't keep punishing young players for what happened with Reece Oxford, and we can't keep punishing young players with smaller contracts because they're internal, like we've seen with Ben Johnson. It takes more to replace these players. And if he was to go to Villa, we get a nominal fee when it comes to compensation. And if he goes on to develop and be like a Declan Rice, we're going to be sitting there going, so why didn't we just offer him 10, 15 grand a week or whatever? I know
he's also playing for England under 18s as well, isn't he? He's already an England under 18 international.
So he has that composure that I talked about. Carrick always had immense composure in midfield. And arguably he could be the same level as Deckers, and he could maybe develop a bit quicker in midfield because he's a natural midfielder as opposed to what Declan was. So there's every chance, given the opportunity, he really could show what he's about as a player. But we need to, with all of these, we need to be incredibly patient because they are young players. They need time, and it's quite a label to have on you from a very early age, saying that you're the next Declan Rice. Bearing in mind what we've just told Rice for. Yeah. It's quite a statement. It's not like saying he's the next Carrick, because that was years ago, and that can be a bit more of an easier transition, maybe.
I think it was just on topic, wasn't it? Because Rice was leaving, and they've got this campaign.
I think that was almost the worst thing that could have happened for him as well. Because look, I don't want to dunk on Moyes any more than we have on this channel, and some of the criticisms of him were very, very unfair, and some of them were very valid. But I think it's also not unfair to say that if he saw something like that, if Moyes saw that, he'd probably go, well, there's a bit of bite back there, and potentially he's going to go, well, you're not going to know. That's a lot of pressure on the boy, and he's going to look to manage him in a different way, or think, well, I'm just going to keep him back here for a bit. I'm going to play him in the youth team. And I think it was almost an unfair pressure on him. I'd love to see him come through this season and get minutes on the pitch, but again, it's a very big ask, and I think we are almost looking at this in a very tough situation for the manager, because Lopetegui's basically got to come in and hit the ground running, or else there'll be a lot of noise very quickly. And I think whilst you can do that, whilst the West Ham fans will get behind you, particularly if you're doing well, if you're giving the youngsters minutes and you're winning games, the place is going to be rocking. But if you're losing games, or if you're dropping points and then you're going and throwing on a youngster, that can really rankle people, especially online. And we know what sort of vacuum that can create.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, with the type of different players we've got here. So we've got a centre back, we've got a couple of midfielders, we've got a winger, we've got another kind of attacking midfielder. So when you're a manager and you've got fans pressurizing you, it's normally the attacking option is like, okay, get George Murphy on to change a game, or like it was last season with Mubama, try and change the game in an attacking sense. When you've got players like Casey, centre back, Orford, midfielder, again, Kadua could be a slight exception, again, someone to change the game, but Potts, again, they're not really going to be, no one's going to really be shouting for them to get minutes unless there's an injury in midfield and there's a gap to kind of fill. It happened with Ben Johnson when he broke through, or you're kind of desperate, which is what happened with Declan Rice coming into a back three, because to be honest, we were kind of desperate fighting a relegation battle. We needed to bring something else in for a bit more stability. But I think with the likes of Murphy, and if Kadua stays, they've got more chance of seeing minutes just because of the type of nature of games. The fans and also Lopetegui himself will be looking at those as options to bring on to change a game, rather than bringing on, say, an Orford to come into midfield over the likes of Ward-Prowse, Souček, Alvarez, Paqueta, all of these names that we've already mentioned. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting pre-season for these lads. I think Lopetegui himself, the focus is going to be on Lopetegui, how we're playing with Lopetegui, the types of players he's got in playing different positions. But it's a massive chance for these new lads. It's a fresh start. I think the best thing and the most hopeful thing you can have as a young player is these types of kind of situations where a new manager comes in, it's a fresh outlook, and you've got a clean slate. There's nothing really to judge yourself off other than, the performances you've already done. But again, the manager is going to give you a fair crack at the whip. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
I think it's also important just to see how much influence Mark Noble has, because he no longer has that kind of, well, this is my ex-boss I'm talking to and I'm trying to convince about certain players. This is now someone who comes in who you are 100% above in terms of your position, because there is no history between you as a kind of that player manager dynamic. So it is, I need you, or I need to see a certain number of players from the youth team brought through this year. And what I need to, and what I want to see, these players in particular that I think need a chance. And these guys need to be training with the first team. So there is that opportunity for Mark Noble to kind of assert himself a little bit into the situation of, these players don't need to be registered, remember, because they're under 21. They don't need to be registered for our Premier League team. So there's no problem for us in terms of giving them minutes or putting them part of the team or anything kind of like that. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of pressures Noble exerts on them to kind of say, these lads won under 18s. 2 trophies at under 18s. They were dominant, really dominant. Yeah. So these are the players that I need to see. And also, or even just to say, stating we need to start pushing youth players through, because if we was getting Europe, as we've constantly talked around, obviously homegrown is a big thing, but the biggest factor is club train. So we need to start producing players, even if it's every, 2 or 3 a year coming through. They may not make it at West Ham. However, they're pure profit sales. So they have to be looked at as that type of asset as well, as to, can I develop enough to sell them? Because they may not be good enough, but they're going to be convince someone to buy them, or can we then actually save ourselves millions of pounds by developing something from within?
Yeah. Well, let us know in the comments who you're most looking forward to seeing in pre-season out of that youth setup. Because pre-season's pretty much getting underway now. We've got our first game very shortly. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see A, how Lopetegui sets up, and B, how he utilizes and integrates some of these youth players. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And lads, until the next one, come on.